All right. And we're live. We're live, guys. Welcome to another episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Michael Boldin, and we are, I got to get my own name right on this. It's Monday morning, August the 6th, streaming live from here at the 10th Amendment Center. It's 9:30 a.m. Pacific time in downtown Los Angeles. So good morning to you if you're here on the West, or a good afternoon if you're back East, or a good evening, whenever you happen to be watching, whether it's live or later on in the archives. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you spending some time with me. Make sure if you like the show and you like what we're doing to smash the likes, because that helps us spread the word. And of course, leave some comments about what I'm talking about here today, or if you have some ideas of what you'd like to hear about in the future. I want to do a quick update. First of all, last week was my first week of doing Good Morning Liberty, and a lot of it is we're still doing test runs, trying to figure out how to get this done well and properly, and just kind of get into a smooth groove of doing it. So far, we're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. My hope is that eventually we'll shift to a daily show if you guys really like that, and there's some demand for it in the market. We'll definitely switch to daily. So far, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And last week, I actually was... If you can't tell, I'm a little rambly. I'll talk a little bit too long. Maybe it's the amount of coffee that I drink in the morning. But I think it's because I'm picking too many topics to cover. Last week I was covering 3 main topics and 3 separate articles and try to smash it all into 15 to 18 minutes, which is really my goal. And instead we've been going 25 to 30. So I'm going to cut that down a little bit this week, maybe not as much today, and hopefully get it down to kind of a more concise conversation going forward. But today, we're going to talk about 2.5 things. Primarily, the articles we're going to be covering are one from Vox that talks about President Trump, the Trump administration being sued by 4 cities for Obamacare enforcement. They want more, and they're claiming that he wants less. We're going to kind of segue into what Jefferson and Madison talked about as far as federal enforcement. That's our half. And then I'd also like to cover an article and a video that we have published recently on CBD oils and food products being available despite an almost complete, absolute federal prohibition on the products. So let's get into this first article over at Vox. Abby Gluck. Just last week, Friday, there's an article that says, President Trump admits he's trying to kill Obamacare. That's illegal. And it says 4 cities have just filed suit, arguing that Trump's attempts to undermine the law violate the Constitution. And I've got this in a few different tabs here because there's so much content to cover. Let's first actually look at what... Now, I haven't verified these claims. They've actually republished an article from last fall because it ties in with what the lawsuit is talking about today. So I think the article is still relevant. Whether they actually get it right or not is a different story. I didn't actually verify whether or not what they're claiming he's doing, he's actually doing, or his agencies, whatever. But let's go over what they're claiming and just... We'll take it under the assumption that this is correct. He's trying to do this. He's trying to undermine Obamacare, and then we'll look at it from how they say it's supposed to or not supposed to happen in court. So they say, first of all, he cut the enrollment period in half from 3 months to 6 weeks. He shut down the federal enrollment website for nearly 12 hours every Sunday during that period, and they claim this is a crucial window when working Americans might enroll. He has canceled already scheduled events in which federal officials had planned to visit states and help with enrollment. He cut advertising for enrollment by 90% from $100 million to $10 million, even though his administration charged insurers on the exchange user fees to generate money for that same advertisement. And then one day before the new budget year began on September 1st of 2017, he announced a 40% cut to the Navigator programs after promising a bunch of grants earlier in 2017 in May. Now, personally, I think Obamacare shouldn't exist. I don't think the federal government should have any involvement in healthcare. Medicare Part D is unconstitutional as well. The courts have been wrong, referring to a tax rather than a mandate. And the regulations involved also violate the Constitution. But let's look at it under the status quo. And the status quo says the federal government can do just about everything. This is what we, the people, and the several states have basically allowed or maybe encouraged. So let's say all of this is correct, that Trump is taking these actions to undermine the federal act. Okay, I've been really hard on the president as far as issues of foreign policy many times, not all of it, but much of it, on surveillance, on his ramp up. Mike Maharrey did a report last week for us. They've actually ramped up enforcement of federal gun control higher than what Barack Obama did. So I've been very harsh on him. But if he is undermining Obamacare, that's a huge win. That would be excellent. I would like to see this. And this is how they refer to it. This is how Abby talks about it over at Vox. She says, modern American history has never seen as full-scale an effort to sabotage a valid law. See, this is how they kind of, they reinforce their own position on it when they're trying to be impartial or talk about constitutional issues when you really should be less opinionated. I mean, I can't speak because I'm definitely opinionated on what should be law or not. But they could have just called it sabotage something passed by Congress. But they say sabotage a valid law, as we have with President Trump and the Affordable Care Act, a law whose legality has been upheld twice by the U.S. Supreme Court. The president has a legal obligation, she continues, under Article 2 of the Constitution to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That means he must make sure that our laws are implemented in good faith, and that he uses his executive discretion reasonably towards that end. And she differentiates in this article from a viewpoint of he's using prosecutorial discretion. Oh, we only have so many resources to be able to enforce this or that, and we have to just kind of prioritize. She also differentiates that on a claim of constitutionality. I'm not sure if this is actually being part of the claim. I mean, I make that claim. It's unconstitutional and it shouldn't be enforced. It should be undermined and resisted in every situation possible. But she claims that because it's passed and because Trump is not claiming that he doesn't have enough discretion or doesn't have to like direct resources one way or the other, that it's unconstitutional to just undermine it. And this is how she puts it further. Trump does not get to say that he can best help the law by killing it and thereby forcing Congress to start afresh. His obligation is to take care that the laws that are already on the books are carried out. So she would have been in favor of the feds enforcing Dred Scott or the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. People that say that if it's passed, if it's a law, if the Supreme Court backs it up, it has to be enforced at all times are totally wrong. Well, we'll get back to that. Since he has flouted this obligation, lawsuits by individuals and states harmed by the damage he causes may now be in order. And now there are lawsuits being filed. There is a lawsuit by 4 different cities. I don't have them off the top of my head. I'm sure it's here in this article. I'll put a link after we're done recording here, both on YouTube and then, of course, at blog.10thamendmentcenter.com, where we publish the weekly post. Michael Ray says, hey, I want to say hi to a couple people in the live chat. Michael Ray says YouTube is censory, only show 3 viewers. It's possible that we don't have many viewers. This is new for us. We have not really pushed really hard on YouTube, but we've seen some growth, certainly, and a lot more people end up watching in the archives. Good morning to Justin Bayola, who I know is watching and very active last week when we were talking about local gun rights sanctuary efforts in Oregon. And Justin, I don't know if you are listening to the radio. I think it's KRCW. I'm not, man, I really should. I'll put a link in the show notes afterwards. I'm doing an interview in Eastern Washington about the local gun rights activism this afternoon at 3 p.m. So that will be live, 3 p.m. Pacific time. So, of course, like, comment, subscribe. Smash the likes. Make sure that everyone knows that may be connected to you on YouTube. They know about it. Share it on Facebook. The more that we all work to spread the word, the more that this is going to get out. So let's get back to this article here, of course, at Vox. And they say that, Trump does not get to make a choice of whether or not he's going to enforce the law. or help implement it? Well, let's go to Thomas Jefferson, and he has this powerful article that he wrote to Abigail Adams, John Adams' wife, in July of 1804. And he's talking about how there was a big conflict between Jefferson, Vice President, and President Adams over the Alien and Sedition Act, and Jefferson is basically explaining what he's done here as honorable. And he said, quote, "I discharged every person under punishment or prosecution under the sedition law, because I considered and now consider that law to be a nullity as absolute and as palpable as if Congress had ordered us to fall down and worship a golden image, and that it was as much my duty to arrest its execution in every stage as it would have been to have rescued from the fiery furnace those who should have been cast into it for refusing to worship their image. It was accordingly done in every instance without asking what the offenders had done or against whom they had offended, but whether the pains they were suffering were inflicted under the pretended sedition law." I mean, that's a pretty... Jefferson was a bit of a drama queen, I guess we could call him. I mean, it's a really powerful analogy that if he believes an act passed by Congress, as president, if he believes an act passed by Congress, even if it was upheld by the Supreme Court, if he believed that an act was unconstitutional, as Jefferson vehemently did regarding the sedition law, it's his duty, no matter what anyone else says he's supposed to do, it is his duty, under his own conscience, under his oath to the Constitution, to do his best to support the Constitution no matter what. Not to wait for someone else to tell him, well, you know, your opinion on the Constitution, well, that's right, so you can go ahead and stop enforcing it. No. This is one person out of millions that is elected to this office of president. Now it's one person out of over 300 million. You're not supposed to elect some spineless puppy dog waiting for other people to tell that person, well, you can stop enforcing now. No, you elect that person to take a position in support of the Constitution, to hold their oath to the Constitution, and do whatever they can, no matter what the risks, to support that. That's their job. That's their duty. And Jefferson, I think, is, well, if it's between a columnist at Vox and Thomas Jefferson's opinion on what someone's duty is, I think I'm going to go with Jefferson every single time. It seems pretty straightforward. So Jefferson says it's his duty, no matter what anybody says, to do what he can at every stage. So if he could do a little undermining here, a little undermining there, release someone from prison here, stop prosecuting there, that's the job. It helps undermine the act until it can be overturned. And then eventually it was. So they were swept into power on that, and he just did his duty according to his own conscience and to his view of his oath to the Constitution. Now, is Trump taking that same position on Obamacare? I honestly don't know. But if he is indeed taking all these smaller steps, even though, because he can't rely on the Republicans I mean, Trump himself actually for the entire campaign talked about repealing and replacing Obamacare. Repeal and replace Obamacare. The only replacement should be with nothing. Now, I think I may have forgotten to switch over to this. This was over at founders.archive.gov. I forgot to switch over. So, now, if Trump has the right view on whether or not he should be, like, it's a constitutional issue or not, that's a different story. I know he wanted to replace it with something else, something that's better. The only thing that's better is the Constitution, and that means the Fed should be out of healthcare. But even if he doesn't take that view as the end goal, he's actually, and these things that Vox is reporting that he's doing are actually happening, then indeed he's moving things in that direction. And while I don't often applaud his efforts, I think that he should continue doing this. Now, how would it play out in court? Vox says there's a case for a lawsuit. Well, maybe there is. Unfortunately, the courts haven't been on our side, and it does take courage to do the right thing, even if the courts are against you. And I often talk about a lady named Angel Rach here in California who lost the case, Gonzalez versus Rach, under California medical marijuana. Well, after that, that case, they ruled against her, saying that if you grew 6 plants in your backyard and consumed them in your own home, never bought or sold them, that was somehow interstate commerce that the federal government could regulate, ban, or prohibit. Then she said, well, she was originally going to run away to Canada if she lost, but she said, and I think she may have done the statement on the steps of the Supreme Court. She basically said, I'm sticking around. I'm not going to stop doing what I believe is right just because the court took the wrong position. And whether or not Trump is showing that kind of backbone, I don't know. I honestly don't care on this particular issue, because if he is taking action to undermine this unconstitutional federal act, this is very positive. Now, Jefferson isn't the only one. We can also actually look to James Madison, the so-called father of the Constitution. And in Federalist number 44, Federalist 44, he talks about refusal to enforce a federal act. And people are concerned about, oh, okay, there's too much power in the federal government, and that's was always the concern in the debates over the ratification. Although the Federalist Papers really weren't widely read at the time, these are considered kind of a mouthpiece for the people who are in favor of ratifying the Constitution. And he writes in Federalist 44, the success of the usurpation, that is, if the federal government takes power that was not delegated to it, steals it, usurps the power, the success of that usurpation will depend on the executive and judiciary departments, which are to expound and give effect to the legislative acts. So Madison was implicitly recognizing through this that even if Congress does something that they're not supposed to do, you have another layer. The executive branch or the judiciary or both may not take the same position. So he's suggesting here that Congress, okay, they may usurp power, and they do all the time. Most of what they've passed in modern times is a violation of the Constitution as given to us by the founders and the ratifiers. So, but Madison knew that there was supposed to be this another step. And he suggests that, well, the president might not take action to enforce this. It's certainly not as strong as what Jefferson had to say, and I think Madison was a bit more of a pragmatist. And I agree with some of the comments here. Like Michael says, so sad how much America has changed. Certainly the view at first, and as we know from a great speech from Patrick Henry, he said, liberty, sir, was the primary object. Liberty was the goal, not an empire. And Justin says, no government say in our healthcare. Absolutely, I can't stop saying that enough, that we should absolutely have no federal involvement in the healthcare system. So, but getting back to Jefferson and Madison, Madison was a little bit more of a pragmatist, or less of a rabble-rouser maybe than Jefferson. Jefferson would always give the strongest principle on these types of things. And he said, look, no way. It's his duty to undermine all the time. So I'd say kudos to President Trump. If he's going to continue doing this, I would like to see more of it happen. And if they sue and he loses, I would like to see him continue doing it. That's real backbone, not back down just because the federal courts say, because the federal courts don't rule the entire system. So the next story I want to go to here, we're already running past that 15 to 18 minutes. It's a video that we did, and I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly, a video that we did recently that I published. It says, permission not needed, CBD legalization despite federal prohibition. And the heading here is, the feds maintain an almost complete ban on commercially available CBD products, but a market has still grown and is thriving. And I based this on an article that was done by Mike Meharry. We actually sent this out as an email campaign recently. You can go to 10thamendmentcenter.com/register if you want to sign up for our email updates. We do 1 to 2 times a week right now. During the state legislative session, it can be a little bit more depending on what newsletter you sign up. But the information is over at the link 10thamendmentcenter.com/register. So a lot of people think CBD products, people use it for anxiety. It's basically a non-psychoactive part of the hemp plant, the hemp resin. So you can get oils from the hemp seed, or you can get oils from the resin. And the oils from the resin can contain CBD, a cannabinoid, where your body has receptors, and certain types of it will deal with anxiety or pain or stress or various different things without people getting high. So you see all over the place. In fact, you're seeing it shipped in interstate commerce all over the place. A pro 3-on-3 basketball league just said it's legal for their sports athletes to use. So it's becoming very common. You can't find it on big retailers like Amazon, but you can walk around my neighborhood and here in Southern California and find it CBD infused cold brew coffee, CBD tea, CBD energy bars, all kinds of stuff. And I've had it. It's great. Like if I'm really stressed, it helps me relax. And you're not even to the point of like having a single beer. Some people will say, oh, I should have just a quick beer or something to relax, or maybe a small drink. But no, it's pretty incredible stuff in small dosage. So some people believe that because it's so available, and it's not just in California, people are shipping it across the country. A lot of states have passed laws to allow the use of this as long as it does not have THC in it or an untraceable amount. So the science behind it has to have a tiny, tiny fraction of an amount, but nothing that your body will process to get somebody high. So people are using this to help each other, and they're shipping it across the country. You can go to like Plus CBD oil or, I can't think of her name. Betty Cronick is her name. She's here in downtown Los Angeles. She ships these energy bars all around the country. And it's a very common product, or becoming more and more common. So people automatically assume that it's a legal one. No one could be doing this if it wasn't somehow legal, but that's incorrect. Just this May, a federal court sided with the DEA, who said it's a Schedule I substance. It's illegal for commercial activity all the time. And this is an example, I think, of nullification in action, de facto, almost accidental nullification. And it shows that when you open the door to a marketplace, sometimes there's confusion. A lot of people want to follow the law. I was talking to my brother about this, and he was assuming almost the same thing. Like, oh, it can't be shipping in interstate commerce. Some guy commented on our YouTube video last week and said, hey, no, you've got this totally wrong. Hemp is totally illegal. They're shipping it interstate commerce. That's why medical marijuana can't be shipped in interstate commerce. The feds would shut this down. No way. Well, the feds absolutely consider it a Schedule I substance. We have a quote from the DEA themselves, and the quote is very simple. He says, let's see if I can get down to this. DEA spokesman Rusty Payne says, it's not legal, it's just not. And the quick summary is that people are getting it confused under the legal status of the hemp amendment from the 2014 Farm Bill. But that only legalized hemp production for research purposes, not broad-based commercial activity. And then again, the hemp oil from the seeds is considered not a danger to get THC into the marketplace because it has to be extracted from the same place. And again, in 2016, Mike Maharrey notes, the DEA released a statement of principles to guide interpretation of the hemp section of the Farm Bill. And it states, the growth and cultivation of industrial hemp may only take place in accordance with an agricultural pilot program to study it. In short, the current federal law authorizes farming of hemp by research institutions or within state pilot programs for research purposes. Farming for commercial purposes by individuals and businesses remains prohibited. And again, I think, as Rusty Payne said for the DEA, it's not legal. It's just not. But they're not doing anything about it. They've also issued another statement that says we're really not going to conduct enforcement actions on this. And the reason is because it's so available. Can you imagine what the PR nightmare would be for them? It's being shipped all over the place. It's in coffee shops. Amazon doesn't have it yet, but maybe at some point they will. They're probably just being a federal compliance watchdog there by not making it available on their platform. But it's available in a lot of states. I know you can get it in Georgia and Indiana and elsewhere. And it would look really bad to go in and hit these small businesses in a major bust when they really don't have the resources to do what they've been doing in the first place. And as long as people continue doing this, it again shows that if you open the door for the marketplace by individual action and then state laws backing those people up, there's not much the federal government can do to shove those so-called laws, regulations, or mandates down our throats. Of course, I want to remind you, smash the likes if you like what I'm talking about. If you find it interesting, leave some comments. I want to thank everybody who's been joining here. Justin points out that the founders grew hemp. I believe Jefferson and Washington both did it prominently and wrote about it. Kit Swain, 59. CBD has cured a woman's lung cancer and many other issues. Yeah, I know people use it for a lot of stuff, and that's, I think, part of the entire PR nightmare. People are using it. It's being seen as a miracle drug of sorts by some people. There was an article in the Washington Post basically talking about a miracle, speaking of Amazon, Washington Post. But a lot of people really believe in it, and they're using it in their day-to-day lives. And to actually start hitting and arresting people who are ill or providing services for people who are ill and touting it is a PR nightmare for the feds. So the feds are recognizing that so far they can't do anything about it. And as long as the market continues to grow without federal permission, I don't think the feds are going to be able to do anything about it. And before we go today, I want to point out this quote of the day from Thomas Jefferson, and it really kind of ties into what we're talking about here. Jefferson saying, hey, if the feds pass something that they're not authorized to do, it's his duty as president to not enforce it. In fact, to go beyond that, not just to not enforce it, but to take every turn possible to undermine it. And that's, I think, what we're seeing, if the Vox article is correct, that's what we're seeing on enforcement of Obamacare. So here's this quote. Whensoever the general government assumes undelegated powers, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force. I would argue that the vast majority of what the federal government has passed in modern times is void and of no force. The key is, and like the people who are conducting business, whether they know it or not, in the CBD industry, it's time to treat them that way too. I would like to see this happen for just about every federal act that violates the Constitution, and hopefully people can learn from these things. Hopefully you've learned a little bit from what we've been talking about here today, or what I've been talking about today. I know I've learned a little bit in doing the research, and I really enjoyed looking up these articles and talking about them with you today. Make sure, again, smash the likes, subscribe to get updates when we go live. Again, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We do also post 1 to 2 other videos per week. Every few weeks, I do an update with Mike Meharry, a much longer one, called 10th or Tuesday. And again, thanks for watching. Have a great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever you are. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.